All right, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the introduction. Alabama shocks Georgia 41 to 24 to win the 2021 SEC championship. I know a lot of you guys out there are shocked because I am. And don't lie to me and say that, man, JT, I had Alabama winning the whole entire time, because last week when I asked you guys who you guys had winning, Georgia or Alabama, 80% of you guys picked Georgia to win, and a lot of you guys said that this game was going to be close. Georgia was going to dominate, and Alabama wins 41 to 24. Now, I had a homeboy of mine on Twitter who said he was going with Alabama, and I got into a little discussion with him. I was 50-50 because I understand this Bama, but this is one of the most dominant Georgia teams that we've seen in a very long time. They had a great defense. They were only allowing, 6 points per game. Alabama dropped 41 on them with ease. And I learned a valuable lesson today. I learned that in the world of college football, the team that wins the majority of times is the team that has the better quarterback. This isn't the NFL. College football is a superstar quarterback driven world that we live in right now. And the best quarterback was Bryce Young today. And he definitely deserves to win the Heisman after this performance. 421 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Every time Alabama needed a big play to stay in the game, Bryce Young delivered time in and time out. And I don't think Stetson Bennett played bad. Because the big question mark that me and a lot of people in the college football landscape had was Stetson Bennett good enough to lead Georgia to a win over Alabama? And I don't think that he was all that bad. Yeah, he could have been better. But overall, when you look at Georgia, this was not the Georgia team tonight that we have seen all season. They weren't getting pressure on Bryce Young. I feel like they did an okay job against the run, even though we thought that Alabama wasn't going to have success running the football at all against Georgia, but the run game was there during certain stretches of this game when it needed to be there for Alabama. You got to remember that Alabama's running back room right now is kind of thin, so Alabama did have a decent amount of success running the football on Georgia, but the big takeaway from this game was how Alabama handled themselves up front, because many people, myself included, didn't believe that Alabama was going to be able to handle themselves up front against guys like Jordan Davis and the Wolverines that Georgia have on the defensive side of the football, and they did that. And I would go as far to say that Alabama's defense was the better defense on the field this game. Now, they did a pretty good job slowing down the rushing attack for Georgia, which is what I expected. They forced Stetson Bennett and Georgia to beat them through the air, and that's what happened. Now, Bowers, the amazing tight end for Georgia. Brock Bowers is probably the best tight end in the nation. He went off this game. It seems like every pass that was thrown to Brock Bowers. 10 receptions, 139 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. He had a phenomenal game. Then, on top of that, the defense for Georgia had a stretch there in this game when they couldn't stop Alabama for nothing. Alabama at one point scored on 4 straight possessions. So now, is Georgia the best team in college football? No. Who is? We don't know, but this is going to be a interesting college football playoffs. We know Georgia's going to be in. We know Alabama's going to be in. Cincinnati should be in. And if Michigan handles business, they should be in as well. I think that anybody could win a national championship this year, because when you look at Georgia, I'm not going to count Georgia out. I think a lot of people are going to look at Georgia and they're going to say, same old Georgia team. They dominate the regular season. Come the postseason, they don't do anything. They disappoint every time. I'm not going to count out Georgia. I definitely think that it would be naive to count out Georgia based on one game and just forget about their complete overall body of work. Now, I think what has hurt Georgia is the fact that Alabama was more battle tested and they've been through more adversity. And even though you don't have to go through adversity, you would like your team to battle through some kind of adversity at some point during the year, because adversity is what builds teams and it's what builds character, and that's what you find out what your team is really all about during the high pressure moments. Georgia wasn't really put in those situations until tonight, and they weren't really able to deliver. Meanwhile, you look at the Alabama team that we saw tonight. This was a dominant win on Alabama's behalf. It was a shocking win, and if anybody tells you that they're not surprised, they're lying to you. Even Bama fans have to be kind of surprised at the performance that was put on display during tonight's SEC championship game. And Alabama struggles in the secondary, struggles when it comes to, getting off the field in certain situations. Alabama got big stops when it mattered the most. Many people thought that the college football world was changing, because to win in college football, you got to be able to score points. And for Georgia, they weren't really able to score points. Their offensive line played pretty solidly, but not as dominant as what a lot of people expected, because one key factor that I'd said that a lot of people were overlooking was just everybody looks at the secondary of Alabama as a big question mark, but overall, Alabama has a really good defense. They're good getting pressure on the quarterback. They're good when it comes to slowing down the run game, and we saw both those things manifest in this SEC championship win. And on top of that, you can never count out Nick Saban. I picked Georgia because I didn't want to go with the narrative of picking a team just because who they are. Subscriber of mine tried to criticize that earlier when I picked Oregon to defeat Utah. I don't like picking teams because of the logo on the side of their helmet or what their name is, because none of that wins football games. But I do actually think that you have to take into account when you have the greatest coach in college football history, Nick Saban, that you can never count them out in the game. Now, there's a lot of people who lost a lot of money on this game because they took Georgia to cover. I took Alabama with the under. And the reason why is because I felt like this game was going to be close. Now, I never felt like Alabama was just going to beat the brakes off Georgia. I thought this was going to be a low-scoring affair, but Alabama's offense from the opening kickoff was on the fire. You had Jamison Williams doing damage, Mechie doing damage, even though he went down for injury before halftime. Like, Alabama's offense caught fire in the middle portion of this game. Now, it kind of slowed down later on around the fourth quarter, but overall, the damage was already done because Georgia was going to have to play catch up, and that's not the kind of Georgia team that you have this year. This isn't a team that's going to light you up offensively, and this definitely isn't a team that is equipped to come from behind. All Alabama really had to do was make sure they took care of the football, didn't have any costly penalties, and they were going to walk out of here with a victory. So moving forward, where does Alabama rank? Is Alabama the best team in college football? I don't think so. Is Georgia the best team in college football? I don't think so. That's about to be decided when the committee releases their final playoff rankings and we get to see the seeding for who plays who. It's going to be really interesting because I think that this is probably the most evenly matched college football season that we've ever had. You don't really know what to expect because I thought that Georgia was going to come in here. They was going to get the victory. Finally, I thought Kirby Smart was finally going to be able to get one up on Nick Saban. We saw one of Nick Saban's former assistants and Jimbo Fisher pull off an upset victory against Alabama during the middle portion of the season. We thought that Kirby Smart may be able to be the second former Nick Saban assistant to do that. Didn't work out so well. At least Georgia knows what their weaknesses is. And this isn't a bad loss. This is a loss that you go back tomorrow, you watch the film, you turn on the tape, and you figure out what adjustments you have to make. And for Georgia, since they never really went through any adversity, they never really knew what their weaknesses were. They understood that they had some limitations, but overall, it's kind of hard to make adjustments when you're put in a situation where you're dominating every single week. So for Georgia, Georgia, this is definitely a sad loss for Bulldog Nation, but definitely a loss that they're going to look back on. And I think this is going to help Georgia moving forward because now they understand where they need to make the improvements at. And for Alabama, they win another SEC championship game. And despite this being considered the worst Alabama team in recent years, this team is most likely punching their ticket into the college football playoffs. And I think that this year probably is one of the best coaching jobs that Nick Saban has ever done, because who would have thought this Alabama offensive line that allowed 7 sacks previously against Auburn in the Iron Bowl will come out and have the performance that they did when they had limitations when it came to the running back room, injuries. They still find the way through all odds, despite being underdogs, to win the game against Georgia and win it convincingly. Hats off to Alabama. Fantastic game. Bill O'Brien coached a great game. He's been under fire all season. Great performance on him. Great performance by their defensive coordinator. Like, the Alabama coaching staff had a phenomenal game plan. Despite Georgia looking like they were the more talented team on paper, it still looks like Alabama reigns supreme as the top dog in the SEC. So you guys let me know what you guys think about this game down in the comment section down below. Make sure that you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and college football videos. Also, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on every single podcasting platform: Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available, and I'll see you guys with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.